When three gang members threaten his wife, Marcus's calm demeanor hides a deadly force waiting to be unleashed. "You'll regret this," he says, his voice chilling. Hey, Story family. Welcome back, and thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm excited to share another intense, action-packed story that'll have you on the edge of your seat from start to finish. Grab some popcorn, because this one's going to blow your mind. Let's dive into this heart-pounding story. It was late in the evening when Jasmine, a 25-year-old pregnant woman, walked home from her part-time job. The streets were unusually quiet, the kind of silence that should have felt peaceful, but instead, it sent an unsettling shiver down her spine. Her hand rested lightly on her swollen belly, the gentle flutter of her baby reassuring her as she walked. She thought about her husband, Marcus, a Delta Force commander who had been deployed on a secret mission for the past few weeks. They had spoken earlier in the day, and the thought of his return kept her going. She couldn't wait for him to be back. But tonight, fate had different plans. As she turned down a quieter street near her apartment, a sense of unease crept over her. The streetlights flickered faintly, casting long shadows across the pavement. She quickened her pace, hoping to get home before the darkness fully settled. But just as she rounded a corner, the silence was broken. Three men appeared out of nowhere, stepping out from the shadows of the alleyway. The leader, a tall man with a tattooed neck and a rough, dangerous look, locked eyes with Jasmine. His smirk stretched wider as he surveyed her from head to toe. The other two men flanked him, looking just as menacing. "Well, well," the tattooed man sneered, his voice thick with malice. "What do we have here? A pretty lady walking alone in the dark. You really shouldn't be out here." His friends snickered behind him, their eyes glinting with something cruel. Jasmine's heart slammed against her ribs as she instinctively clutched her purse tighter. Her body went stiff, and her mind raced for a way out. She was alone. Marcus wasn't there to protect her, and this street was far too empty for anyone to hear her cry out for help. The man took a step closer, and her breath caught in her throat. "You're in the wrong part of town, sweetheart. Hand over your purse, and we won't hurt you." "Please," Jasmine said, trying to keep her voice steady despite the fear threatening to swallow her. "I just want to get home. Please let me go." The tattooed man took another step forward, his hand shooting out to grab her by the arm, twisting it behind her back with a force that sent a sharp pain through her body. Her breath hitched in her throat as she tried to pull away, but his grip tightened, bruising her skin. "It's not your choice anymore," he hissed, twisting her arm further. "Now, give me the purse. Now." Jasmine's heart raced. She wasn't just fighting for her purse. She was fighting for her baby. She thought about Marcus, about how he had always warned her to never back down. His voice echoed in her mind, urging her to stay strong. She dug her heels into the ground, pulling with all her strength, but the man's grip only tightened. "Please," she gasped, her chest tight with panic. "I won't resist. Just let go of me." As the second man reached for her purse, Jasmine fought harder, but she felt herself losing the battle. Desperation surged within her, and she felt a tear escape from the corner of her eye. This wasn't supposed to happen. She wasn't supposed to feel this helpless. Just as she thought it was all over, a voice cut through the tension. "Get your hands off her." The three men froze, looking up with wide eyes as the voice rang through the night. Jasmine's pulse spiked as the familiar voice reached her ears. The footsteps grew louder, and a tall figure emerged from the shadows, walking with purpose and confidence. Her heart skipped a beat. Jasmine's breath caught in her throat as the man stepped into the streetlight, his frame unmistakable. There was no mistaking the confident, controlled stride. Her husband. "Marcus. Marcus," she whispered, almost as if she couldn't believe her eyes. Marcus's gaze was sharp as he sized up the three men, his body tense with readiness. He didn't flinch or hesitate. His training was evident in the way he held himself, calm and prepared. Without looking back at Jasmine, he focused all his attention on the men who had threatened her. "Let her go," Marcus said, his voice low and commanding, sending a chill down Jasmine's spine. His words were sharp, the kind of tone that left no room for negotiation. The men blinked, uncertain. They had no idea who they were up against. "You really think you can threaten her and walk away?" Marcus took a step forward, his body language exuding a power that made the men shift uneasily. The one with the tattoos took a step back, unsure of what to do. Marcus didn't give them time to think. In a flash, he moved, closing the distance between them with the speed and precision only someone with years of combat experience could muster. The tattooed man attempted to strike, but Marcus grabbed his wrist, twisting it in a way that made the man cry out in pain. With a swift motion, Marcus kicked the man's legs out from under him, sending him crashing to the ground. The other two men tried to react, but Marcus was already on them, his movements too fast, too fluid. One man was pinned to the wall, gasping for breath as Marcus held him there. The other, realizing he was outmatched, ran. Jasmine's breath hitched as she watched Marcus take control of the situation, his every movement precise, his focus unwavering. She had never seen him in action like this, but she didn't need to. She trusted him completely. As the last man ran off, Marcus finally turned to her, his face softening as he saw the fear in her eyes. He rushed over to her side, placing a hand on her swollen belly before pulling her into a tight embrace. "You're safe now," Marcus whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Jasmine buried her face in his chest, her tears flowing freely. She was safe. Marcus had come for her, just like he always promised he would. The men slowly turned toward Marcus, their initial confidence faltering as they took in the cold intensity of his stance. Marcus stood tall, eyes locked on the trio with a focused, unyielding gaze. His posture was calm, almost casual, but to anyone paying attention, it was clear he was ready for action. He didn't move a muscle except to breathe, but the men could feel the danger emanating from him. The tattooed man sneered, but there was an unmistakable flicker of doubt in his eyes as he tried to hold his ground. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded, his voice a little shakier than he intended. He raised his chin, trying to play it tough, but it was clear he wasn't used to someone like Marcus, someone who didn't flinch at intimidation. "I'm her husband," Marcus replied, his voice cold and sharp, every word carrying weight. His military training was apparent in the smoothness of his movements, the way he stood with his shoulders squared and his hands ready for whatever came next. "And you're going to regret this." The tattooed man let out a low laugh, trying to regain some semblance of control. He stepped forward, attempting to close the distance between them, but his swagger was more out of arrogance than confidence. "What are you going to do about it, huh?" he mocked, reaching down for the knife tucked in his waistband. Before the man could even get a good grip on the handle, Marcus moved in a blur of motion. His hand shot out like a snake, grabbing the thug's wrist with an iron grip. The tattooed man's eyes widened in shock as Marcus twisted his arm, forcing the knife to fall to the ground with a clatter. The thug let out a gasp of pain, but before he could react, Marcus drove his knee into the man's gut. The thug crumpled to the ground, gasping for air, his face pale from the blow. Marcus didn't waste a second. His eyes flicked to the other two men, who froze in place, fear creeping into their faces. They had never expected this kind of response. Marcus's expression didn't change. He was still calm, but his voice was a low growl as he turned to the second man, who was now backing away, trying to make himself look less of a target. With one swift motion, Marcus spun the second man around, grabbing his arm and twisting it behind his back in a painful hold. The man grunted, his face flushing red from the pressure. "I'm going to ask you nicely," Marcus said, his voice as controlled as ever, though the threat behind it was unmistakable. He tightened his grip on the man's arm, making him whimper in pain. "Leave her alone, or I'll make this worse." The man's body went stiff with fear. He struggled, trying to break free, but Marcus's hold was unyielding. With one swift movement, Marcus yanked him toward him, slamming him into the nearest wall with such force that the sound reverberated through the street. The impact was hard enough to rattle the windows in nearby buildings, and the thug's breath whooshed out of his chest as he gasped for air. The third man, witnessing his friends being easily subdued, took a step back, then turned and bolted. But Marcus had already assessed the situation. He released the second man, who dropped to the ground, clutching his arm, and sprinted after the fleeing thug. Marcus was faster. His legs powered forward with the strength of someone who had spent years honing his body to respond with deadly efficiency. In a split second, he closed the distance, and before the man could get far, Marcus tackled him to the ground with a ferocious force. The thug's body hit the pavement hard, and the wind was knocked out of him. "Not so fast," Marcus growled, his hand gripping the back of the thug's shirt and yanking him to his feet, pulling him up by the collar. The man's eyes widened in terror as he realized there was no escape. He struggled, but Marcus's grip was like iron. The thug's eyes darted around in desperation, but there was nowhere to go. His legs trembled beneath him, and his face went pale as he realized how hopeless the situation was. Marcus shoved him against the nearest car, his breathing still steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He wasn't panicked. There was no fear in his voice, only control. "This is your last warning," Marcus said, his voice deadly calm. "Leave. Now." The thug swallowed hard, his entire body shaking with fear. His lips quivered, but he didn't speak. He didn't dare. The look in Marcus's eyes was all the message he needed. Slowly he turned, his body moving stiffly, and without another word he ran. Marcus didn't let his guard down for a second as he watched the thug disappear into the shadows. He stayed still for a moment, then slowly turned back to Jasmine, his expression softening. His eyes met hers, and in that instant, Jasmine could see the relief on his face, but there was also something deeper, a kind of silent understanding between them. The danger was gone. He had kept her safe, just like he always promised. Jasmine walked slowly toward him, her heart still racing, but now filled with gratitude. Marcus held out his hand, and without hesitation, she took it, allowing him to pull her into his arms. As she wrapped her arms around him, her body finally relaxed, and she knew, without a doubt, that she was safe. Marcus had come for her, and nothing was going to take that away. The three men, their faces drained of color, slowly pushed themselves off the ground, eyes wide with fear as they glanced back at Marcus. They could see it now. The man they had underestimated was not just a threat. He was a trained, lethal force. Their bravado, which had been so bold moments before, now seemed like nothing more than a dangerous mistake. One of the men, the smallest of the three, staggered to his feet first. He met Marcus's eyes, and without a word, he quickly turned and began to retreat, his legs shaking beneath him. His friends, now realizing they were no match for the force they had just encountered, followed suit. Slowly at first, then with increasing speed, they backed away, their footsteps loud on the pavement as they glanced over their shoulders, looking for any chance to escape. As they disappeared into the shadows of the alley, Jasmine stood there, frozen in place, her heart still racing. She could hear the pounding of her own pulse in her ears, and for a moment, all she could do was watch them flee into the night. The terror from moments ago seemed to hang in the air, but it was quickly replaced by a sense of relief. Relief that the danger had passed, and she was still standing. But it wasn't just the danger that had passed. Jasmine's eyes shifted back to Marcus, who was still standing tall in the street. His stance was calm, his body relaxed despite the intensity of the moment. He exuded a kind of confidence that left her breathless. Every movement he made, every step he took, was precise and calculated. It was as if the chaos had never touched him. He was in control the entire time, and seeing him in action like this sent a wave of awe over Jasmine. This was the man she had married, strong, disciplined, and capable of handling anything that came his way. She had always known that Marcus was a force to be reckoned with, but seeing him act so swiftly, so efficiently, had taken her by surprise. The fear she had felt was now mingled with pride. This wasn't just any soldier standing before her. This was her husband, the man who had sworn to protect her. And he had kept that promise. As the last thug disappeared into the night, Marcus took one final glance in the direction they had fled, ensuring they were truly gone. Then, with a soft sigh, he turned toward Jasmine. His hardened expression from moments before softened when his eyes met hers. The relief in his gaze was immediate, and he began to close the distance between them, his steps measured but full of purpose. "You're safe now," Marcus said, his voice gentle but firm. The words were simple, but the weight behind them was heavy. He had done what he promised, and now everything was going to be all right. Jasmine's legs felt weak as he came closer. She had been holding herself together through sheer will. But now that Marcus was here, her emotions came flooding to the surface. Without thinking, she rushed into his arms, burying her face against his chest, feeling the familiar warmth of his body. "Marcus," Jasmine's voice broke, and her tears spilled freely as she clung to him, the fear and tension from moments ago pouring out of her. Marcus held her tight, his arms wrapping around her protectively, as if he never wanted to let go. He rested one hand on her belly, feeling the gentle rise and fall of her breathing. The weight of the situation had not gone unnoticed by him, but right now, all that mattered was that she was safe. "I'm here now," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "And I'm never letting anyone hurt you or our baby ever again." Jasmine squeezed her eyes shut, her breath shaky with relief. She had never been so scared in her life, not even with all the uncertainties of Marcus's job. But now, in his arms, she felt a calmness that only he could bring. The night, with its fear and danger, began to melt away. The man she had always trusted, the one who had always promised to protect her, had kept that promise. He had saved her. And now, despite everything, she knew she was safe. Her heart, which had been racing moments ago, slowed as she melted into him. There was no more fear. There was only him and the quiet, comforting assurance that no matter what came their way, they would face it together. Jasmine's body relaxed against his, and she pressed closer to him, her tears slowing as the flood of relief washed over her. In Marcus's arms, she found everything she needed: safety, love, and the certainty that they could withstand anything together. And as the sounds of the night settled around them, Jasmine knew that, for the first time in a long while, everything was going to be okay. As Marcus guided Jasmine back to their apartment, the weight of the night began to sink in. The adrenaline that had kept her on high alert was slowly fading, leaving a deep, tired heaviness in its wake. Jasmine's legs felt like lead, each step taking more effort than the last. Her mind raced back over the events, the fear, the desperation, the men closing in on her. But now, with Marcus at her side, she felt safe, protected. She wasn't alone anymore. The streetlights cast a soft glow over them as they walked, the evening now quiet and peaceful. Jasmine's body, still trembling from the intensity of the situation, pressed closer to Marcus as they moved in unison. His strong, steady presence was all she needed to calm her nerves. She could feel the warmth of his hand wrapped around hers, and it was enough to keep her grounded. Her thoughts swirled with emotions as they continued walking: fear, relief, gratitude. She thought about how lucky she was to have Marcus in her life, how he had come for her without hesitation, and how he had made everything right again. Her heart swelled with love for him. "I'm so proud of you," Jasmine whispered, looking up at him, her voice thick with emotion. The words felt heavy, like a weight she had been carrying, and she couldn't stop them from slipping out. "You saved us." Marcus glanced down at her, his expression softening. He gave her a small smile, a comforting warmth in his eyes. He brushed a loose lock of her hair behind her ear with one hand, his fingers lingering for just a moment longer than necessary. The simple touch sent a ripple of calm through her. "I'll always protect you, Jasmine. Always, Marcus said, his voice low and steady, filled with conviction. He didn't just say the words. He meant them with everything in him. Jasmine felt the knot in her chest loosen, and a wave of gratitude washed over her. She knew the kind of man Marcus was: strong, capable, and unwavering. But tonight, she had seen just how much he was willing to do for her, how far he would go to keep her safe. He wasn't just her husband. He was her protector, her hero. And that was something she would never take for granted. As they reached the door to their apartment, Marcus gently pulled the key from his pocket and unlocked it. The door creaked open, and they stepped inside together. The quiet of their home felt so different after the chaos they had just faced. The familiar warmth of the living room, the soft glow of the lamp, the comforting silence, it all enveloped them, offering a sense of calm they desperately needed. Marcus turned to face her as they stood in the doorway, his hand resting on the small of her back. He pulled her gently into his arms, his embrace a safe haven. Jasmine closed her eyes, leaning into him as he kissed her forehead tenderly. "I love you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. She didn't need to say more. Everything she felt for him, everything he had done for her, was in that simple declaration. "I love you too," Marcus replied softly, his hand moving to rest over her belly, as if instinctively guarding both of them. His warmth radiated through her, and she let out a deep sigh, feeling the weight of the night lifting from her shoulders. For a moment, they just stood there in the quiet, the world outside forgotten. Everything that had happened seemed distant now. They had made it through together. No matter what had come before, they had faced the darkest moment of their lives, and they had overcome it. Together. Jasmine's body finally started to relax, the tension of the night seeping away as she felt the comfort of their home, the safety of being in his arms. She knew that nothing could ever take away the peace they had in this moment. The terror of the evening had tested them, but it had also solidified something she had always known. Together, they could face anything. With Marcus by her side, nothing in the world could tear them apart. They moved deeper into the apartment, the door closing softly behind them. As the night settled around them, Jasmine knew that the new beginning they had just stepped into wasn't just about surviving. It was about living, about moving forward, stronger than ever before, and nothing, no one, could take that away from them. If you enjoyed this thrilling, heart-racing adventure, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more intense stories, and share with your friends. Drop a comment below, and let me know what you think of Marcus's heroic actions. Your support means the world, and I can't wait to bring you more incredible stories. See you next time.